Yeah. Okay, so the intent or the objective. It's really to build a center of excellence in food safety laboratory science, but also in food regulatory science, serving Africa and the Arab region. This is meant to support major initiatives that are currently underway. We know Africa is in complete transformation right now, driven by the integration efforts resulting from the African Continental Free Trade Area and its implementation. The Middle East and this region also is witnessing a number of regulatory transformations, mostly with the creation of new agencies, the creation of the National Food Safety Authority in Egypt. A number of other countries are reforming their food regulatory system. So it is a period of change and transformation, and we're looking at ways to accompany that. At the same time, there are a number of investments that we are witnessing in Africa and in the Arab region, capacity building programs dedicated to this area. And the idea is to leverage this effort and maximize its impact. So the idea came to create a four-pillar based approach that will focus on definitely capacity building and training. So essentially looking at aspects of food laboratory science, basically building on the successes and even on the learnings that we have from the initiatives such as the one that we've heard about, but also complementing it with other aspects of food regulatory science, risk assessment, risk management, regulatory policy development. Also using both type of capacities, face-to-face training, and I would say the traditional capacity building delivery mechanisms, but also what technology is offering us and what we've learned from the COVID-19 period, using virtual reality and all the technologies that allow, in fact, remote interventions. Looking also at developing partnerships with academic centers in the targeted areas and attempting also to certify the training in such a way that there would be an attestation of achievement for the competencies that will be gained. A second pillar is to bring the state-of-the-art analytical technologies to the region, to the targeted region, and make it available for demonstration, but also for application development. This means that we will need and we will have to rely on the technology providers. And I'm looking at you here, among some of you are represented in this room, who would be willing to contribute as private partners by making available freely the technologies that they have developed for the purposes of training, for the purposes of acquisition of competencies, and also for the purposes of development of applications. To scientists from the targeted regions who would be potentially coming to the center or using virtual reality will be trying various options for their application development and potentially making a choice for the technology or the methodology of choice that fits their purpose. We're also aiming to offer through this initiative a number of services, and this is also for the purposes of sustainability. So some services in the area of analytical science services, regulatory services, and this is also where the private element can materialize. We know that there are some difficulties of accessing some of the technologies in the targeted region. There is a potential, and this is part of the idea, is to build an online laboratory instrument supermarket hub, laboratory instrument or laboratory applications in order, again, to contribute to the dissemination and potentially also to the affordability of these tools. We're hoping also that the center would contribute in the implementation of some research initiatives, data collection initiatives, and to act as a data and intelligence hub, for example, for collection of data on occurrence of contaminants in food, contributing to the effort of collecting food consumption data, even actually act as a center for monitoring and early warning and foresight for the region as well. Now, it is not the intent of the center to become a center of routine analysis in any way and not to compete in any way with private operators that would work in this area. Rather, the intent is to provide an enabling environment for the multiplication and maybe for the investment of private operators to open more centers of analysis that will serve the interests of the region, both regulatory agencies and the food and agri-food industry. Now, what we are looking for is, again, using the public-private partnership. We're looking, of course, at the involvement of our organization, the Global Food Regulatory Science Society. Because we are a non-for-profit organization, we would like to promote public goods. And we were looking also at anchoring this initiative in academic centers and programs in the region. Given that we are talking about food laboratory science, we cannot envisage to do that without the partnership of AOAC International. And obviously, if we are talking about Africa and the Arab region, we will be looking at the partnership of the Sub-Saharan Africa section, as well as hopefully the newly to be created section in the Arab region. And we hope to develop unique partnerships with food regulators, both in the African continent as well as in the Arab region. So this is what we are looking at generating, hopefully relying on competent and experienced staff that will be contributing to this center, creating content for training and content that could be certified, that could be also disseminated through the collaboration with academic centers, looking at creating unique partnerships with food regulators in the region, partnerships with the technology providers and making available the latest, the state-of-the-art technologies and tools, and also hoping that the sustainability of this effort will also be promoted through collaboration with a number of funding partners and capacity building promoters, such as the programs that are developed and implemented by the USDA, USAID, and other development and aid programs. Now, these are some of the activities that you would envisage as a result of this. Obviously, training using virtual reality, in-person training, virtual platforms, exhibitions, webinars, generation of data through the data hub, scientific services that will be made available particularly to regulators, but also to other partners and other stakeholders. So one could envisage that because of the regulatory science capacity that the center will acquire, and actually the staff or the network of experts that it will be relying upon, it could be offering, for example, a risk assessment service to, let's say, the JFDA, if the JFDA needs something in that regard, or to other, to other partners in the region. We would be also looking at the private element of this, again, to support the sustainability, potentially a partnership with a private operator that will be operating an e-commerce service, out of which this not-for-profit entity would actually get some royalties in order to sustain, again, the activity. So this actually leads me to share with you, to a certain extent, the model of operation. You see some elements of the model of operation. Of course, primarily, we're looking at creating some public goods. And this is what I mentioned: training programs, laboratory proficiency and verification programs, the data that will be collected, the risk assessments, and any type of support to food regulatory decisions such that they are underpinned by a scientific and regulatory science rationale. Now, we have moved in the analysis of this idea, and we have identified that we've looked at where we could locate this physically. And our choice at this point is actually landing on the Arab Republic of Egypt. For a number of reasons. Egypt is at the intersect of both continents or both areas, the African continent as well as the Arab region. Egypt is also the center of the League of Arab States. And we are thinking also for connectivity, from a connectivity standpoint and infrastructure. We could go or reach most of the areas of the African continent from Egypt. The idea, however, is not to restrict this to Egypt, but rather to think also of a hub and a node, different nodes model. So essentially, depending on the needs depending on the thematic, for example, requirements. If we need a particular area or a particular emphasis on mycotoxin testing in a particular area of Africa, for example, because of the type of crops or the type of agri-food business development in an area, one would not exclude that essentially a physical center could be set up in collaboration or in partnerships with the relevant partners of that particular region. That also does not exclude that you would have a similar center here in the GCC states, given that you would like to cover the entire region of the Arab region and Africa. Of course, we're hoping to have this initiative integrated or supporting the efforts in food regulatory integration of the African continent, particularly in the context of the African Continental Free Trade Area development. We're looking, of course, at supporting various activities right now of convergence of food regulatory decisions, the Arab Task Force on Food Safety, other coordination initiatives by the GCC, standardization organization, and other initiatives. And hopefully also to be able to address some of the emerging issues, and climate change being one of them, through the development of technological solutions and analytical solutions, amongst other things. For example, to answer the emergence of new contaminants, in different crops as a result of climate change and different conditions of agriculture. You see basically the model of operation. We're looking at, of course, a sustainable project. We will be relying, and we have to rely on the in-kind contribution, but it's in-kind, but through really instrumentation. So essentially, it has a cash value, instrumentation, tools, consumables of the technology providers. We're looking also at some support from development initiatives. If we can, capture or be identified through this initiative as an implementer of a number of capacity building programs, thanks to programs that already exist, and actually see the value of relying on this center as as an area where there is value added to rely on this center of excellence. And of course, looking at this public-private partnership with the e-commerce model, if there is a private operator, and of course, if the sales are being supported by the activities of the center, there might be a return on investment that will be coming to this not-for-profit operation. Now, so far, there are 3 individuals that have been involved in this effort to try to steer it forward. Dr. Owen Fraser here, Dr. John B, and myself, and of course, supported by the various organizations. We had the opportunity to present this initiative to the board of the Global Food Regulatory Science Society, and we received the support from the entire board to move forward. We have been talking to a number of development partners, and we received really great encouragement, for example, from colleagues from the US Department of Agriculture. And we continue, in fact, to seek support and partnerships with other partners such as the African Union and, of course, standardization organizations in the various regions, and the GSO being one of them. We're looking right now at the development of this operation model, including a costing scheme for the operations of the center, because we would like to make sure that the investments are done in a careful manner. And we are even actually moving to identify some of the hosting sites that could allow us really to kickstart this initiative. I wanted to use the opportunity of a meeting such as this one with a number of opinion leaders, whether be it present here with us in Dubai or actually with us online, in order to, first of all, introduce the idea, but also to hear your insights, your input. Again, emphasizing on the value that we could gain from this public-private partnership. Thank you again for your attention and your support.